Hello, hi, thank you so much to Callum for the invitation to come talk at Umbraco London. This is my second talk ever. The past one was about just shy of a month ago at DDD Southwest, which was a thing of glory and wonder. Who was there, by the way, at DDD? Anyone? No one. Was no one there?
We live in London.
Just you and Callum.
You know.
I suppose you had COVID.
God, didn't realise. You okay now? Oh, fine.
Don't worry.
Legitimate concern, I had no idea. Okay, cool. Yeah, so this is a talk I gave at DDD, and it was far more generically about kind of equally parts .NET, Azure, Umbraco, and quite a lot about sort of working from home conditions. I've slightly tweaked it today to be far more about Umbraco and especially the new starters experience, because quite realistically, that's the one I can give the most input from. So, most importantly, thank you for coming, and you are wonderful. This was when it's for a talk, when it's by choice, rather than being in this kind of boardroom setting all the same. But the point still remains. Cool, so my name is Rich Jackson, pronouns he, him. I'm a master's computer student at Cardiff University. I'm currently on a placement with a startup company called Nightingale HQ. Before that, I was a professional musician for about a decade. Before that, I was a data scientist. Before that, I was a forecaster for a call center. And so in general, I've had like a pretty wiggly career, but in general, I just kind of enjoy being me professionally. So pretty much what I'm going to be talking about are my first year within the .NET space, Azure, and then the past sort of 6 months or so in Umbraco. You know, because basically, as we'll talk about in the next slide, this talk is about people. Rather than being about technology so much, I really increasingly feel that the tech space is just about people, communication, all of these good things. And you know, the more there are toolings such as AI, etc., the more our ability to describe what we actually mean becomes very, very important as well. So this is far more about the kind of community side rather than these are my top 10 methods or like my top 5 extension methods. My God, that'd be a great talk. Anyway, so disclaimer, hugely subjective. This is me just giving my opinion. It can feel very much just like a slideshow of me reliving my own experiences. I hope they're of some value, and if they aren't, I apologize. All criticism, because there will be criticism, is always meant entirely positively and with the greatest respect, because my God, is it be difficult to be a developer. I want to say thank you to Carl Saguna at every single point, pretty much, but specifically because of the fact that he very much was the reason that I'm doing this talk. We were sort of chatting and he's like, I think you should put together a talk for this. And thus, I always have to kind of make some, essentially, not quite sacrifice, but at least a dedication to Carl. You know, we'll see how it goes. So, this talk's basically in 2 halves, experiences and reflections. The background colour will change depending on if we're in the first half or the second half, so you know if we're near the end, pretty much. Okay, so part 1, the experiences. This is far more just talking about the past history that I've had and the technologies. So, 2021, September, I started a Master in Computing. So this is what was called a conversion course. It's specifically for adults who want to do something different with their life. So instead of, say, a 3-year undergrad, blah, blah, they pretty much just try and fit an entire degree into a 1 year. Notably though, you can do a placement, which in itself is another 12 months. So you can actually kind of shove an extra year into your year-long course. So that's currently where I'm at. I got a job because I posted in the Cardiff Developer Slack group going, hi, does anyone want somebody? And Nightingale HQ said yes, which was super lovely. Super quick bit of context, Nightingale HQ are a startup founded by Steph Locke and Ruth Kearney in 2019. Steph Locke now works for Microsoft. She was actually organising today's Microsoft Reactor event, which I was just at. So I've also had Azure-based things said at me for about the past 7 hours, so apologies if I make no sense. The purpose of Nightingale HQ is to advise and help digitalization within the manufacturing sector and create bespoke tooling and for typically using Microsoft stuff. This talk isn't about Nightingale, it's just for context, really, to tell you what I'm doing. In my first year, the sort of work that I'm doing is primarily using .NET, Azure and Power Platform, doing infrastructure as code, stuff with Bicep, process mapping with Visio, dashboard creation again with Power BI, you know, these kind of bits and pieces. And it is a full-time work-from-home, office-less startup. So we're just going to quickly go over the 3 key technologies of the talk, which is .NET, Azure, and Umbraco. So .NET, super quick, just explanation of what is .NET. So open source framework allows for us to develop on any sort of platform, main language C++, C#, F#, Visual Basic, and there are various different technologies which can be built upon it, such as ASP.NET Core, Blazor, and Unity. And the reason I kind of highlight this is that, for me, my first experience and knowledge of .NET was through Unity. And I think this is quite an interesting thing to take into account when you are thinking of onboarding and the path from random person to development to ultimately Umbraco development, which we'll talk about as well. I actually initially took this job at Nightingale because, oh, it's .NET, cool, I can get better at doing Unity so I can make more game stuff, right? And it's just nice to be, well, I hope it is useful to give my reasons for why I was then sort of interested. These are just a couple of projects of mine. So in my first year, the kind of use cases for .NET have included sort of building and maintaining web APIs, making admin panels with Blazor, WASM, database migrations, unit testing with XUnit, data handling with EF, all these kind of things. This is more or less just me kind of keeping a snapshot of this is what I think .NET is 12 months in. And it's kind of more for me to look back and go like, oh wow, that's what I was doing, let's see how we are. Because it is, of course, crazily extensible. Azure, Microsoft's cloud platforming solution, providing solutions, tooling, infrastructure, anything you want, any place in the globe. It's just massive and it's crazily huge, and especially when you're starting off, is incredibly intimidating. And my first impressions of Azure, very much the fact that there is so much potential and it's so hard to use correctly. So the amount of error messages, the amount of, oh, I want to create this VM, well, I'm going to do it in UK West because that's in South Wales. Wait, there are literally no SKUs for VMs in UK West. I guess everything I do is now UK South then. You know, reading about Azure, learning the qualifications, going through the fundamentals course, etc., fills you with, oh my God, look at what I can do. And you can do like none of it, and it's crazily hard. And it's so easy to accrue costing, such as the $282 that I got from my specified threshold of 1 cent, which always makes me smile quite a lot. This was just through experimenting, exploring with some premium storage. I actually, again, I live on Twitter. I just kind of asked them like, hi, this is a mistake, please be nice. And they were, and they just wrote off $282 because that's the world we live in. Over the past 12 months, I've just basically gone ham on getting qualifications. This again is from my desire to kind of speed run a tech career, and qualifications are a really, really good way of doing it. For Microsoft, yeah, like I was sort of alluding to earlier, did a bunch of these fundamentals courses, so the normal fundamentals, AI, the security, some Power Platform, and then I've actually managed to do 2 of the associate level ones, which were so difficult, and I don't think people should do what I did basically.
They are very difficult.
They're crazy, right? And for me, I learnt them because at this point in time, I thought I was only going to stay with a placement for 12 months. And so I was pretty much trying to get as many qualifications, get as much experience possible. So then when I left, I would be able to go, look at me, I've got this stuff. Spoiler alert, I'm actually staying with this company, so none of that matters. So I no longer am putting any pressure on myself. But one of the interesting things about qualifications in general was the fact that as I was learning them, I was basically learning for an exam. I think there's this really interesting idea of when they are useful versus when you actually learn it. When you get bar work, you need to have bar experience to be able to have the bar work. But how do you actually get that first bar work to get the bar experience, etc.? And that's sort of how it felt. My favorite bit of advice from a YouTuber on the Azure Administrator was this guy going, yeah, so I worked for about 3 hours a night, and I was working as an Azure Administrator at the time. And I was like, how is that a useful case for anyone here? So I got these qualifications, but I'm in no way qualified to do these things. And it's really annoying to me. I don't have the experience of having done the stuff I've learned to do. Because
AWS is actually easier.
It's so funny.
The qualifications are easier for some reason.
Nice, cool. Yeah. So I'm going to go to AWS now.
Pretty much so.
Exactly right. Okay, cool. So now I'm going to talk about Umbraco. The friendly CMS, Hudson Mall in 2006. You probably know this, but I have no idea who this is. It's just on the Umbraco website somewhere.
Did anyone know that?
I've never heard
Did
of
I?
that.
So,
Is that an anagram of
I
someone
have
that's
never heard the
actually
name. I just
English?
know the quote.
Yes, me too.
100%. So basically what happened was my darling mother was proofreading this and then was like, the friendly CMS, that's what Hudson Moore said that. And I'm like, what do you mean? It's on the Umbraco website. It's like, if you look into it, Hudson Moore shows up, who's like one of the original content designers in 2000s.
We didn't.
That's so funny. If that's wrong, please tell me, but that's on the website.
When did you start working for Azure?
First time round?
Yeah.
No,
Should we-
2013-ish, 2012.
Community member.
Yeah.
I think
2006.
it's the logo with wings.
Wingy logo. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, Richard.
No, that's great. I mean, the best thing I can do in 6 months is to astonish an Umbraco London meetup with Umbraco history.
It's to where's the Umbraco.com.
It's to actually check out the website.
Umbraco comes up third link.
Hiding in plain sight. Seriously.
Still friendly.
Genuinely the kind of people they.
Incredible. All right, so web content management built on SP.NET Core. The reason I have even been interested in using Umbraco is entirely through word of mouth. My manager, who's quite careful about the technologies he likes, was like, oh, I love Umbraco. Umbraco is great. And that was like the gold star of recommendation. People like Carl Schooner, etc. have also, and there's a lot of love for it. And I'm going to come back to that because I think it's quite interesting in terms of the onboarding because, spoilers, it's quite difficult to learn to use Umbraco. And many times I absolutely would have been put off if it weren't for word of mouth recommendations from people I trust telling me that it was worth it. So put a pin in that, that's going to come back later. And as a side note, our company is looking to migrate Umbraco anyway, so it's currently like Netlify, Hugo kind of thing, and so yeah, that's yeah, I don't know, like, I literally never heard of it, like, oh, okay, right, that's what we do now. Yeah, difficult with learning and onboarding. Yeah, I'm going to come back to that because there's quite a lot to talk about. I don't need to tell you the majority of this, great flexibility, diversity, the amount of things you can do with Umbraco and the amount of places it does show up is quite amazing to me. My friend, completely out of the blue, messaged me and goes, radio station, like West Wales Radio, whatever, is an Umbraco site. Can you help me with reordering a menu? It's like, okay. And there is that kind of almost jokes like meme of like, you probably used an Umbraco website today and you didn't realize kind of thing. And like, it's actually annoyingly true. Really, really helpful. Twitter, Discord. The forum is also really, really good. Discord, I have increasingly started to dislike. I know that's I know Callum's on this side. I don't think it's a good place to ask questions and expect help. The forum, however, is really, really underratedly good. Some people, again, possibly the people in this room, I don't know, but genuinely, forum's super useful. Communities is lovely. It's really nice that at DDD, I was the only person who was doing a talk, this talk, which had the word Umbraco in it. And so people were kind of having these tangential discussions about Umbraco. People were describing it as being the gold standard for communities and for open source communities and stuff like that. And that was really, really good to hear. Yeah, can we open a window? It's not just me, is it? Like, it is crazily hot. Okay, cool.
Can get a little bit noisy though, but let's see.
Yeah. I was like, why is it less than 3?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm
I'm guessing that's like some sort of...
sorry.
It's a heart. I'm not very good at this.
Sorry.
It's like, there are less than 3 people in the community.
The community is made up of less than 3 people, but who are they? And that's the real question.
I'm surprisingly stupid at
Just read Callum Whyte.
Well, it's less than, so one of you is an imposter. Okay? And I've never seen you 3 in the same room, so you know.
Grammy's heartless. Yeah, exactly.
Umbraco Spark was great. Like, again, I'm going to talk about conference and stuff like that, but it was wonderful. So one of the things I decided to do, kind of in a use your pain sort of thing, is to actually start an active Twitter thread of my own learning. Warren was one of the people who messaged, and I mean, the point being though, loads of people messaged, loads of people commented, was kind of like, oh, I'm really sorry you found this difficult, I'm really sorry, you know, what can we do? And you know, and Sophie Toft, again, like Queen of Docs, and I have the world of time for, she is so supportive in terms of, cool, if you've made, you know, just very, very supportive in general. Like in my first sort of couple of days, I just found like a broken link, and I was like, cool, I'm just going to do a pull request to fix this link then. And because I'm bad at technology, it didn't actually happen. So I then went and did it again. And then someone was like, oh my God, how nice is it that someone not only did a pull request, but then did it again when it's like, it just felt really obvious. It feels like a really good thing. And one of the threads I'm going to kind of talk about here is how important documentation is, and frankly, how much I think everyone should be contributing more to it, because there is such a body of knowledge. Like I said, I just think pull requests and documentation is just the greatest thing. And the fact that the query builder just gives you link queries is like, that was the first time I was like, yes, this is very okay with me. So whoever did that is you know, cool. I then started an Umbraco blog about actually making an Umbraco blog. I just again wanting to catalog those early experiences because I think they're invaluable. You kind of it sort of feels a touch like domestic abuse. You kind of get used to the pain after a while. You sort of like, yeah, you sort of deal with it. You sort of, when you're learning new technologies in general, it can be so like, you kind of forget how difficult lots of things were. So I think the new starter experience, to capture that and not feel stupid about why didn't this work or anything like that, is actually really good. So I created a blog. There is approximately 1.5 posts on it, and now I've taken it down because I'm migrating it. But yeah, I'm sorry. It's literally Laura Mipsum from the Umbraco tutorial, which I just did about an hour ago. But I did this blog article called "Deploying Umbraco CMS is Hard," and then talked through a bunch of things about why it is so difficult, which prompted Seb to actually put together the cheap experiment of him deploying Umbraco for free. Oh, nice, I've been playing around with the cheap Umbraco, the cheap Azure myself, and Seb was like, your post was my direct inspiration. And you know, again, that sort of validation, having just started, to have somebody who is quite senior, in my opinion, in the organization to take it that seriously, was again, really good. When there's lots of talk about open source community building and how you interact with users, etc. like that, so much of it is about being heard, having your opinions acknowledged. And one of the things I have felt is while I have pretty much stumbled along every single step of the learning, it's always been met with incredible support and always taken very seriously.
Do we know if Seb ever released the blog post?
I have absolutely no idea.
I don't think he did he?
No.
I would have seen
I will poke him.
Please
He
do.
went on a really long holiday about.
Yeah, it never really looked
A shout out.
He has been away for
Shout out for old Matt here as well, who's done
a similar thing.
Yeah.
a while ago.
Yeah, that would be on .NET framework.
Yes.
I could probably push it even more now.
You got it down to something like $3, didn't you?
Nice.
Oh yeah.
Because for Seb, the only
It was £8, I think.
That's probably about.
Running Umbraco 8, I think.
Seb's doing it for literally.
Yeah, he's doing.
like zero.
The only thing you have to pay for is that you need the app service to not be the free tier if you want to use a custom domain. Thank you. Sorry. So like it has to be cheapexperiment.azurewebsites.net.
And he is committing his SQLite database to his repository.
Yeah.
So all content changes he does locally, commits the database, does a deployment rather than editing on the server.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's not paying for anything. So.
Yeah. Again, these are kind of useful things when you are starting off, and it is not business critical if your SQLite database gets stolen with all of your life secrets, etc. It's about a way. I mean, I think especially when you are starting off learning programming, one of the things which always strikes me as funny is how much terminal-based work you do. How much everything is like. When I said, "Oh, I've made this choose your own adventure thing," and oh, what is it? And it's like, you know. You are walking here, what would you like to do? Go left or go right kind of thing. It's really invaluable to have beginners just be able to release stuff into the wild like this. So the more there can just be, here's how you get something up into the cloud, like off no real work. Really important. Document pull requests, what I was saying earlier. I mean, frankly, I come to you humbly, just people better at Umbraco than I am, which is all of you. I would love for people to be more involved in writing documentation. because this is where the body of knowledge is, and then I, a idiot, come along and attempt to do things and run into these really odd issues or edge cases which aren't explained as to why. To Callum's point earlier on about the SQLite database, it isn't made explicitly obvious why I wouldn't use that in production. The only time I find out that it's not to be used in production is when I talk to people. And when that is something which is one of the defaults, it's very, very important to be aware of. So I would just kind of like implore that people do more. And also at all levels, at the beginning levels, because the worst case scenario is that you're wrong and someone tells you, because that's also really, really valuable. Cool, teething problems, pretty much what I talked about. We'd love to see more onboarding, documentation, sample projects, videos. Sample projects is a big one just in terms of here is a copy of what's best practice. Best practice is one of those things that's
Yeah, this has been about a 10-year conversation.
I think, I will not go into that, but I think for when you are learning, these things are important.
I completely understand the reasoning, it's just that what is good and best practice.
I think you should spin it on its head and think of pitfalls, common pitfalls. Don't think about over querying your concept. Don't do
good
like,
practice rather than best.
Yeah.
Is a nice reason.
Fine. But I would say that while, I mean, and to your point, while there are good reasons why best practice is to be used cautiously, as somebody who's learning, it's so easy to just be told that what you're doing is bad. And here are all the wrong things to do. And if someone could give at least good practice, doesn't necessarily have to be the best, absolutely, the more you have context, the more you are aware of what is the best for that particular instance. It's something to emulate is what I'm talking about. So yeah, that's fair. Is that a reasonable kind of like, yeah.
I think you make a really good point. Like, for someone who's had no experience getting started, you don't necessarily want a list of what not to do. You do want a list of what to do. I think there's room to have a discussion about this. There's room for opinion, I think, and people to say, in my opinion, this is how I would do something. It's a very different thing to someone telling you what the right and wrong way to do something. David said, this is how you can opinionate it. This is a way to do it.
Or at least with reasons. Like, I think ultimately, actually to that point, to actually explain, if I were doing, here is a template, if you were doing such and such, you would probably go the other way, but this at least works. So it just generic boilerplate kind of things. Again, we'll literally talk about Paul Seal and starter kits, etc. But that's something I think is kind of missing, to be honest, because that's a really helpful time to go. Cool. Because my secrets cannot be revealed. Apologies.
I think it was the wrong
I was going to say, funny thing is,
Sorry.
years ago when I used to do PHP, one of the things I really liked, there'd be a whole bunch of things that all teach the functions in PHP, but then you'd have the standard function text, and then there'd be a comment section like, where people say, don't use it this way, here's a real world example of how to use it. So you have the text saying, here's what you do, here's why you do it. Then you can at least see what people are using it, how they're using it. And then someone saying, don't ever use it that way. And then we'll link up to Ray Jones' work.
Essentially, there needs to be a list of techniques that you can apply to different scenarios without forcing it on anybody, but just to say, have you thought about caching?
Want a rough and ready way, but it's not perfect, but we'll get you quickly to do this one. If you want it really full on, everything is.
And it could even be like, you use it when, in this scenario, don't use it when you've got, don't use the caching if you've got logged in users and you need to display their name to somebody.
And this is the kind of stuff that, like I say, as this is your world far more than mine, I would find it much easier if I had at least some kind of material in this sort of vein. Cool. I'm gonna move on. I'm definitely going to overrun. I'm really sorry, but feel
We
free.
keep interrupting you. So.
Yeah.
No, well, I mean the Q&A is now. This is the thing. Like this talk's prompted a really interested Q&A within the audience when I was doing it. So I just didn't. I was like, yeah, cool with me.
That's what happens at Umbraco.
And the last point for this, because it leads into the next, is the difficult balance when building on another technology. Because the problem when you are learning is not knowing where the problem is. So my own experience of this specifically, I was into Python about a decade ago and using Mezzanine, which was a CMS built on Django, which in itself was Python. And so, and that basically, I just wanted a website where I could do like it was just for music stuff. And I was like, cool, WordPress probably won't do this, so I'm going to try and learn Python. And then suddenly I had this huge amount of complexity and didn't know where the problem would be. And this is one of the issues that Umbraco has being built on ASP.NET Core, being built in .NET, using C#, using your own computer, shout outs to Docker. But the point being is that like, there have been Umbraco issues, which are actually ASP.NET Core issues, but I don't know that. And there is kind of, not unreasonably, a reluctance to then link to the documentation of the Microsoft part. But I would strongly advise that is so helpful to at least have. Obviously that's hard. Obviously the Microsoft versions change and every version change and version changes. Really frustrating for everyone involved. But because of appreciating the different layers that this is built upon, this kind of idea, I don't really feel gets discussed in terms of how much of a problem it is. Like I'm going through a whole thing right now of learning ASP.NET Core to help out with my Umbraco learning. And I asked this in the Discord and had like one person like in a thread, a couple of things, just saying like, yeah, you can. If you want to do any more with Umbraco, you should probably do that, but you don't really need to. And it's like, it was sort of a dumb question of mine really, but if you want to take learning Umbraco seriously, you have to know what it's built upon. And obviously this doesn't take into account anything like databases, operating systems, hosting, DNS or domain, anything like that. There are, because ultimately tech is difficult, but just something I wanted to say there. Last two slides specifically on Umbraco stuff. I've recently been using Unpost. They did a coronation themed promotion where they gave 6 months of usage to the first 10 people, of which I was one of them. And I think they're wonderful. I think they're absolutely great. Aaron Sandler is typically the person I seem to be dealing with on an almost daily basis, because I absolutely respect and think their mission statement is so good. But again, they have many teething issues in terms of onboarding. It's also, there have been issues at the Unpost side. I uploaded a bunch of stuff and then it just didn't work. And then I posted on Twitter like, great, everything's fine, and now I've just got a black screen, that's progress. And he's like, oh, that's actually our problem, that's an Unpost issue, let me just restart that server. And then suddenly it was there. And that's again one of those obstacles of learning. I literally have as the learner, I don't know what is my problem. And I don't know what is Aaron's problem, I don't know what is Unpost's problem. So again, that's something that Aaron is very aware of, so I just kind of wanted to highlight that. Paul Seal, you can all drink. So this is I think Paul, I actually haven't spoken to him ever in person. I've seen him walk across the room in Umbraco Spark. But again, Paul's work, I think I would probably say is the most valuable for the new starter. The work he's done with Clean Starter Kit, the work he's currently doing with quick blocks. Other people might be involved, apologies, I'm not trying to dismiss anyone else's work, I just don't know. He does a bunch of YouTube tutorials, etc. Again, I just really like the work that Paul does, and I would like to use it more, but I just wanted to kind of acknowledge that quickly here.
Just as a note, there's a lot of people that use those, even experienced people do. I remember, hang on, let me just check that tutorial.
Who's used Paul Seal's Arsenal build this week?
Mm-hmm.
You need to fix the code samples as well. If you're using dark mode and you confuse the code to black against a black background, you can't really need it. But yeah, on a regular basis.
That's fair. So basically at the end of the time, that's basically the end of part 1. So I'm just going to do a super quick wrap through some of the part 2 stuff, so apologies. So yeah, reflections, meetups and conferences. These are the lifeblood, wonderful human being here, child of Tumblr, Eli. So this is just talking about how important networking is in terms of conferences, meetups, stuff like this, stuff like .NET Southwest, stuff like the Wales Azure user group. This is how you meet people, really, really important. Free food is the greatest thing. And thank you for doing that. And again, they're invaluable for word of mouth recommendations, such as Umbraco. And one of the weirdest things is when I speak to other people about them having just started a new job, and I've sort of been gallivanting around all of these random conferences because I'm a startup and they trust me basically. And they're like, oh, it's so lucky they let you go. And like, so to anyone who has underlings, please let them go to events. It's so, so good for you. It's so, so good for everyone. Conferences, I just attended a bunch of conferences. Umbraco Spark, here's me, here's Seb going at the speed of light, there's a bunch of people in the background. You! It really...
That's not Santa Garland, shit.
It is. No, that is you.
Okay, good.
That is but yeah, Umbraco Spark is amazing, the code jam is fantastic, please do more of those things. Brilliant example of community building, 10 out of 10, no notes. Jaxa Award for Conference Talk of the Year goes to Laura Weatherhead, the compassionate developer of open source. Her talk at Umbraco Spark was the talk that I wish I could give. I just sat there like going, oh my god, this is just so great. She is doing exactly this talk at Code Garden, the extended version, the large scale version, and if you weren't there, then, I mean, even if you were there, go see it again, because I just think it's so, so valuable, and Laura in general is a legend. So I just wanted to acknowledge her legendary status. Super quick things, because some stuff that she is talking about is communication, the assumptions, new employees, and the lack thereof of any documentation. Again, documentation, reduction of tacit knowledge, the ability to actually communicate and onboarding, these are all like my things. Quick, nice definition, communication, being able to express your intent and meaning clearly. And I think when we're talking about the GPT world and increasingly using AI, this is why it's super, super valuable. Chris Lafra wrote this book called Communication for Engineers, and I think this is fantastic. If anyone hasn't checked it out, please do. It's just such good tech-based contextual examples of good communication, how to give compliments, how to diffuse things. Chris works at JP Morgan. I met him at PyCon, and he was just giving out copies of his book. And he sort of gave me this book and was like, oh god, I love communication. It's a really, really big thing as well. And it's like, cool, I wrote it. So it's nice when you can sell someone their own book. I feel that's a good way to go. Super quick definitions of empathy and compassion. Empathy is understanding someone, and compassion, understanding and wanting to help them. I'll talk about that a lot. Art of asking, this is to do with helping people ask questions, being polite, being specific. Most important thing is being specific. Actually explain what your question is. And avoid making life too difficult for yourself, artificial complexity. And read error messages carefully, which I do not do. And actually answering the questions, be polite, be specific. And these two were the points which caused a bit of discussion last time I did this, of taking the time to answer properly. I think managers in general are quite busy, and so will typically be prone to giving quite terse, quite quick responses, which can be very destructive. And actually are quite a negative experience, probably for both people involved, and make the person who asked the question not want to ask future questions. So I would always implore that people at least say, be with you in 10 minutes, or in an hour, just take your time. Take your time to get it, to give yourself the time to answer the question rather than hastily do something. And managing the expectations is just what I mean with that, just say, I'll be 15 minutes or an hour, or come up with a code word. If you see Albuquerque, that means I'll get back to you after lunch or whatever. And always be empathetic and compassionate. Okay, and last section, so I'm just trying to go through this super quickly. Moving target of learning. So the idea that tech is ever changing, we won't ever learn anything, but the fundamentals will stay the same, which is why it's important again to learn these fundamentals. Achilles chasing the tortoise there, good old Zeno's paradox. The idea that no matter how close you think you are to something, it will never quite be there because tech is just changing forever. And Achilles really should just be going home and hang out with Patroclus instead. Right, so learning new technologies, just embrace your curiosity, always be curious, always do these kind of things. I'm going to just kind of skip on. I really like Microsoft Learn, I really like O'Reilly Learning and LinkedIn Learning. I also really, really like books, and past papers are great ways of doing so. But the problems with bad learning materials include the lack of follow-ups or discussions, because you don't know when you're reading something which is completely unrelated to what you're actually looking for. It might be an article, but it's you don't know if it's definitely the issue you have. And this is something when I was teaching a lot of adult learners, especially like music stuff, they would come to like, I'd ask like this music theory question, they come back like a week later with like, all right, so I read this like Wikipedia article, and I was like, oh no, it's just like, just this bit, that's all you need. So having people to ask that you are comfortable with is also super important. And the ability to make changes and pull requests. Managers and teachers, the idea that people in the tech industry get promoted up and then have to teach the people below them with basically no training of how to be a teacher. It's a cultural thing, and it's a really damaging thing. Or more precisely, it can be a really damaging thing. It can work fine, but I really wish there was more training for managers, because ultimately they're put in an unfair position. You know, this is the whole thing of being promoted to a point that you're no longer comfortable. And for managers, that's then, you know, you just want to code, and now you suddenly have to like look after a bunch of people. And especially in tech, there is a big culture of the manager is teaching the people below. So I really wish there was more teaching for managers. It's just not fair on the managers, quite frankly. And then the necessity of good examples, exactly what we were talking about earlier. I just think there needs to be more examples, because it is easier to criticize something and say that's bad than to go, this is good, and you know, etc. Anyone know what this building is? Anyone guess what this building is used for? It is a library. Good work. It's a library in San Francisco. Good work. So final thoughts before I wrap up. Microsoft Tech World needs more investment in looking after the new people. It's so hard. Like, it's so difficult. But the connections with the community are what make it bearable, for want of a better word. It means that you are, like, because to a degree everyone's kind of struggling, but I think the more I'm able to personally talk to people and share these woes, the easier it gets. Communication, invaluable, underrated skill. Go watch Laura's talk, it's amazing. Educational skills should not be assumed. Oh, it can be so bad when they are, and it can go so wrong for everyone involved. And always try to be aware of your own assumptions, what you think is obvious, because empathy. What's next for me? I'm doing my dissertation, I'm going to continue with Nightingale. I want to do public data projects, and I'm doing a talk next week about process mapping and like data visualization stuff. So anyway, that's me. Ultimately, the point of this is that tech is hard, and that everyone can look after one another, and in general, within the Umbraco space, that is very real. Lots of people are everyone I've spoken to has been wonderfully helpful. So, you know, kudos to yourselves, because you're all being excellent to each other, which is the ultimate point of everything. Thank you for listening. I've been Rich. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you to Callum for inviting me. Thank you.